in music, doing all the things, studying abroad?
Yeah, that's a
Because
great question. Um, I studied abroad when I was a junior at Boston University. So I did my undergraduate studies, my Bachelor of Music in at Boston University. And part of what they had that I didn't know when I applied at the time was a study abroad program where you study abroad at the Royal College of Music in London. You basically live like 1 minute away from the school, which is also right across the street from Royal Albert Hall. And you take all of the classes that the students at the Royal College of Music take. And you also become a member of their studio. You take lessons with the professors there. And that was an incredible experience because each of these moments of getting to experience music in a different part of the world really has helped me to understand how many, I guess, levels of music there are. And I going and experiencing what was happening at the Royal College of Music was helpful to see other players who were also my age who were in an entirely other country who were doing exactly what we were doing at BU. And being able to see like, oh, when I apply to a job in the future, I'm not just applying, against people who live in Boston. I could be, applying against these people who are working just as hard across the water. So that was a great experience because the teacher that I worked with was Alan Thomas, who at the time was the principal trumpet player in the BBC Symphony Orchestra. And I during this time I really struggled with my playing. I was having a really hard time staying motivated to practice, which I felt frustrated about because I had the greatest opportunity in the world to be able to be, in another country and to take in everything that it had to offer. And to his credit, working with Alan was amazing because he gave me very simple, fundamental tools to go and do in a practice session that I took, and basically it became like a sort of trance like thing that I would do every day. And it was very basic things like doing a slur from a C to a C and then tonguing that C and making sure that your jaw isn't moving at all when you do it. And some of these things that he taught me, it took me a very long time to sort of implement. There were a lot of problems that I had in my playing that had started to develop that I wasn't paying attention to. So one of the great things was being able to have access to him as a teacher, and then being also immersed in the studio. Some of what we had was we had these trumpet studio classes where for a lot of orchestral music, they will use B flat trumpets, whereas we here in the US will use C trumpets. And so there were some fun master classes where myself and another trumpet player, Rebecca Oliverio, we were there and they would say, okay, Americans, like play this excerpt on C. So we would play, and then they'd say, okay, and now people from RCM, like play this excerpt on B flat. And they'd say, isn't it much better on B flat? And so it was great to also see, in the context of trumpet, what options there are for colors and sounds, and what, different groups of people will use for that. So, and on top of all of that, it was, of course, when you're in college, you're like, who am I as a person? So, being abroad, I didn't have any of my family there. And so it was just interesting to sort of, I guess, develop as a person and figure out what I like to do. And, all of the main portion of my friend group were still in Boston. And so part of it was also, figuring out how do I communicate what I need as a person with an entirely new set of people in a country that, they kept warning us, you're going to experience culture shock. And I didn't believe them. And I 100% experienced like the most astounding culture shock when I was there. And one of the other things that I feel like I took away from it was also, I guess, culturally, a lot of the people that I spoke to were very, I guess, open about how they were doing. Like, I feel like in our culture here in the US, if you ask someone, how's your day going? You'd be like, it's going pretty well. How about you? We sort of give at times like a generic answer. And almost all of the students that I interacted with or faculty that I interacted with, I'd say, how's your day going? And they'd be like, oh, it's like terrible weather today. Like, don't you think so? Like, I stepped in the puddle on the way in, like, could be much better. And I think like I took some of that and being able to say, we can have real talk sometimes, even if we're strangers and we're able to have these conversations, being able to say, not everything is going perfectly right now. But that's okay. Like, let's keep going. And I guess being able to access that more human element out of the facades that sometimes we feel like we cordially, wear.